The twin suns of planet Chiron 5 burned gently over the human colony city of New Terra. People walked through the trading district, busy with shopping, trading, and their normal lives. Children ran across the dusty streets, and shopkeepers shouted about their goods. Everything looked normal until something very unusual happened. A tall figure entered the district, taller than any human around. He wore a silver cloak, smooth and shiny like water. His skin was a soft gray, his eyes black with no white, and between his long legs, there was a strange bulge, not hidden, not protected, just there, large, visible, and impossible to ignore. People stared, then looked away, then stared again. Some whispered, others laughed awkwardly. Was it a body part, or was it a weapon, or something else? Nobody knew, and nobody wanted to ask. But one person did not laugh or turn away. Her name was Sarah Greaves. Sarah was a young linguist working with the Human Research Division. She had studied alien languages, cultures, and behaviors for 5 years. And now, standing near a spice vendor, she couldn't take her eyes off the strange visitor. It was not just the bulge that made her curious, it was the way he moved. Slow, careful, like he was trying not to disturb anything. He didn't touch the stalls, didn't speak to any traders, and didn't even look directly at people. He kept scanning the crowd with his black eyes, as if searching for someone. Then he suddenly turned and walked towards Sarah. She stood still, surprised and a little nervous. He stopped one step in front of her and tilted his head. "You are not afraid like the others," he said in perfect English. Sarah blinked, confused. "No, I'm curious." The alien's bulge shifted slightly, pulsing as if it had a heartbeat. Sarah tried not to stare, but it moved again, and she couldn't help it. "Does the bulge between my legs intrigue you, human?" he asked. "Is that why you're acting strange?" Sarah turned red, but then smiled slightly. "Actually, no, I was more interested in your language." The alien didn't smile, didn't blink. He simply said, "That's unfortunate. What's your name?" Sarah asked, trying to remain calm. "I am Rinix," he replied, "archivist of the Fifth Corps." "That sounds important." "It is," he said, with no pride in his voice. "I record the end of species." That sentence hit Sarah like a storm before she could ask more. Rinix looked over her shoulder and said, "They are watching me now." She turned around quickly, but saw nothing. When she turned back, Rinix had already begun to walk away. She followed him, quietly. Rinix walked through the market, past humans, droids, and street performers. Every few minutes, his bulge would move, not randomly, but as if reacting to something unseen. Sarah took out a small scanner and pointed it toward him. There was no tech signature, no weapon detection, no energy source. Whatever that bulge was, it wasn't made of metal or energy. It was biological. She followed him down a quiet alley where no other people were. He stopped suddenly and said, "You are following me. You're interesting," she replied. "And you said something about recording the end of species." "That is correct," Rinix said, turning to face her again. "But I am not here to destroy humans. I am here to understand them." "Then why are you scanning people with your whatever that thing is?" He looked down at the bulge and placed his hand over it. "This is my archive. It stores the genetic, emotional, and mental data of dying races." Sarah stepped back. "So you collect memories?" "Yes, but only from species that are close to extinction. But humans are not dying," she said. Rinix was silent for a few seconds. Then he said something that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Not yet." Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, Rinix stepped closer. He looked her in the eyes and whispered, "You have something unusual in you, Sarah Greaves." She froze. "How do you know my name?" "I read it from your brain's emotional waves," he answered calmly. "You are different from the others. You carry a signal." Suddenly, his bulge began to glow softly, and strange patterns appeared on his skin. Rinix placed 2 fingers on his own temple and whispered to himself, "Target located, anomaly confirmed." Sarah's heart began to race. "What does that mean?" she asked, but Rinix didn't answer. He turned away, walking deeper into the alley. The last thing Sarah saw was the bulge pulsing like a living heart. Then, he disappeared around the corner. And she knew her life had just changed forever. Sarah. Greaves couldn't sleep that night. She kept seeing Rinix in her mind, the calm voice, the black eyes, and the bulge that seemed alive. Not once in her years of study had she seen an alien like him. Not just strange, he was calculated, like every word and step had a hidden purpose, and he knew her name before she even spoke it. Outside, the colony city was silent under the twin moons, but deep underground, inside a hidden research bunker, alarms had started to blink red. Something alien had entered human space. Something undetectable. The system didn't recognize it as a threat at first. But now, the scanner screamed one word in flashing letters. Bioweapon signature detected. At sunrise, Sarah was called to the Human Science Council's underground facility. She entered the chamber and saw two people already inside, General Voss and Dr. Lin, on a large screen. A blurry image of Rinix's bulge was displayed in slow motion. It was pulsing, changing shape slightly, like it had its own heartbeat. Sarah looked at it and said quietly, "It reacts to emotions, Doctor." Lin turned to her, surprised. "You've met the being?" Sarah nodded. "He spoke to me, said he was an archivist, not a soldier." "Then why is he carrying a living weapon between his legs?" General Voss snapped. Sarah hesitated. "He said, the archive stores memories, genetic data, emotional signals of dying species," she added. The room fell silent. Then Dr. Lin whispered, "That bulge. It's not a weapon in the normal sense. It's a living machine, part organic, part synthetic, capable of scanning and storing the essence of life." General Voss frowned. "Essence of life? Sounds like science fiction," Sarah replied. "Welcome to Chiron 5. Suddenly, the screen changed, showing a live feed from Drone Unit 47. Rinix was walking toward an abandoned construction zone at the edge of the colony. But he wasn't alone. 3 other cloaked figures followed him. From a distance, unknown, unidentified, and moving too smoothly to be human. "Zoom in," Voss ordered. One of the cloaked figures carried something on its back, a small case glowing blue. Dr. Lin gasped. "That's not a case, it's a containment pod." "For what?" Sarah asked. Lin's voice dropped. "For cloning." Before anyone could react, the drone feed turned to static. "Signal lost," the technician said nervously. General Voss turned to Sarah. "We're sending a team. You're going with them." "Me?" "I'm not a soldier." "No," he said. "You're bait." Hours later, Sarah stood in the cold metal hallway of a silent factory site. The air smelled like dust and old wires. She had a small scanner in one hand and a hidden transmitter in her ear. Her job was simple. Talk to Rinix again, find out what he wants, and keep him distracted. The team of soldiers waited outside, weapons ready, just in case. Rinix was standing near a broken control panel when Sarah found him. He turned slowly, as if he already knew she was coming. "You returned," he said calmly. Sarah stepped closer. "You didn't give me much choice." "You were never in danger," Rinix replied. "Then what about the others following you?" she asked. Rinix looked past her, eyes narrowing. "They are not with me. They are with the ones who fear the archive." Suddenly the bulge began to glow again, brighter than before. Sarah's scanner beeped rapidly, detecting strange energy. "Readings, what is it doing?" she asked, stepping back. Rinix placed both hands on his hips, and the bulge began to unfold, like a flower blooming in reverse, or a machine changing shape. From the center of the bulge, a soft light emerged. And then, a pulse, a wave of invisible energy hit the walls, shaking the ground lightly. Sarah's eyes widened. "What did you just do?" "I initiated replication," Rinix said. "What does that mean?" she asked, heart racing. From the light, something began to form. It looked like a child at first, small, human-shaped, but glowing faintly blue. Its eyes opened slowly, and it looked directly at Sarah. Then it spoke, in a soft young voice. "Mother." Sarah froze. What is that?" "A clone," Rinix answered. "Built from the emotional imprint you gave the archive. It is not human, but it carries your memory." Sarah took a shaky step back. "You cloned my feelings? Your pain, your loss, your questions." Rinix said, "The archive responds to strong signals, and your mind was filled with them." The child stepped forward, still glowing. Then it saw a small photograph in Sarah's coat pocket. A photo of her missing brother. The child reached out, touched the photo, and whispered, "I remember him. He screamed like you." Sarah's legs felt weak. Her breath caught in her throat. She dropped the scanner, and the sound echoed in the silence. Rinix didn't move, but his voice became soft. "The archive does not lie. It remembers everything it touches." Outside, the soldiers prepared to breach the factory, but inside, Sarah realized the truth. The bulge between Rinix's legs wasn't just a storage device. It was a mirror, and now it had shown her something she didn't want to see. The child that called her mother was no longer glowing. It stood in front of Sarah, skin pale like hers, eyes dark like Rinix's, and face eerily familiar. It blinked slowly, just like her little brother used to. But he had gone missing. 2 years ago on Earth, declared dead, no trace found. So how did this creature, this clone, know his face, his scream, his memory? Before she could ask, the ceiling above cracked slightly. A soft hiss echoed through the walls. Rinix turned toward the corner of the room, his eyes narrowing. "They are here," he whispered. "Who?" Sarah asked, her voice shaky. "The humans who don't believe in talking first." A loud thump followed, and a smoke grenade rolled across the floor. Sarah grabbed the child, shielding it with her body. But the child didn't cough, didn't cry. Instead, it reached out and touched the smoke. And the smoke froze in place, still like a painting. Rinix stepped in front of them and spoke to the air. "End combat mode. I surrender." The walls burst open, and 6 soldiers entered, weapons raised. They saw Rinix standing still, hands open, bulge glowing softly. "Do not touch the archive," he warned. But the soldiers didn't listen. One of them shot a dart at Rinix's leg. Another moved in with a scanner. Then the bulge reacted. It grew warmer, brighter. And then suddenly, it sent out a ripple of energy. All electronics stopped working, lights flickered, and even the soldiers' visors went black. The bulge had disabled their tech without touching them. The clone child stepped forward, looked at each soldier, and said in a calm voice, "You are afraid." One of the soldiers dropped his weapon and stepped back. Sarah shouted, "Stop!" "He's not attacking, he's defending." But General Voss's voice came in through the comlink. "Extract the asset, neutralize the alien." Sarah was taken with Rinix and the child to the vault. It was the most secret facility on Chiron 5. Hidden under the southern mountains, not even the council had full access. Only top-level science officers and military intelligence knew what was stored there. Sarah had never been inside, but she had read about it in files marked top secret. Level 9. Now she walked through cold metal halls with Rinix beside her. Hands bound but calm, the child followed them, quiet, observing everything inside the vault. Walls were lined with weapons from 100 worlds, laser rifles, mind disruptors, cloning tech, alien armor, and things that didn't even have names. But in the center of the vault was something even stranger. A large tank filled with glowing green fluid. Inside it floated another bulge. Sarah stared at it, confused. "What is that?" She asked Dr. Lin, who stood beside her. "That," Lin replied, "is our version of the archive. We found it on Mars 70 years ago, inside a crashed alien ship. We didn't know what it was." She added, "Until now." Sarah looked at Rinix. "Is it one of yours?" He nodded slowly. "No." Sarah frowned. "No?" Rinix's voice was calm, but heavy. "That one is from a future where humanity dies." The room went quiet. Dr. Lin explained. We studied it for decades, couldn't activate it. But now that Renox's archive is here, the dormant one is reacting. The clone child walked over to the tank, placed its hand on the glass, and the fluid inside began to swirl. The old bulge floated toward the glass as if pulled by an invisible thread. Then it spoke, in a voice older than time. "You've returned to stop the fire, Sarah." Step back, eyes wide. "What fire?" Renox answered, "Your extinction," in another chamber of the vault. Scientists studied the clone child's brain. Its structure was human, but its neural activity was faster, brighter, and more complex. Dr. Lin whispered to Sarah, "It's evolving in minutes," she added, "not years. And it's carrying your memories and your pain." Sarah stared at the child, heart racing. "What if it becomes something we can't control?" Renox's voice echoed behind her. "Then your greatest weapon becomes your greatest threat." Sarah turned. "You said you're not here to destroy us." "I'm not," Renox said, "but others are." He looked at the glowing tank, then at the soldiers watching him, and some of them are human. Just then, the vault lights turned red. An alert blared. Incoming energy signatures detected above atmosphere. Unknown vessels approaching. Dr. Lin's face went pale. "They found us," Renox nodded. The archive woke up. They always come when it wakes up. Sarah looked at the clone child, who now stared upward toward the ceiling. Eyes glowing again. "It's not just a memory device," she whispered. "It's a signal. A call," Renox said, "for the past to meet the present and decide," he paused, "whether humanity deserves a future." The clone child stood at the center of the vault, not breathing, not blinking, yet completely alive. It tilted its head to the left, then to the right, as if it were listening to something no one else could hear. A deep hum filled the room, low and ancient, like the sound of a planet remembering its past. Sarah watched in silence, feeling a strange pull in her chest. Her heartbeat matched the Every beat echoed like a knock on a door she never knew existed inside her. Dr. Lin whispered, "It's syncing with you." Sarah looked at her, confused. "Why me?" Renox stood beside them, still cuffed, still calm. He answered softly, "Because your blood carries something old, something the archive recognizes." The clone turned toward Sarah and reached out its hand. Its voice was quiet, childlike, but deeper now. "Do you wish to see what I see?" Before she could answer, the world around her began to dissolve. She was no longer in the vault. She was standing inside a forest of light, trees made of data, stars woven between their branches and floating around her. Memories, faces, languages. Species long dead, it was the archive, showing her its soul. A tall being appeared beside her, shaped like Renox but older. Its voice boomed without speaking. "We store life not to control it, but to honor it." Sarah turned slowly. "Then, why come to Earth?" The being answered, "Because humans are repeating a pattern that leads to extinction. And one of your own tried to steal the archive's power." Sarah blinked, and she was back, gasping. The child still stood in front of her, eyes glowing. Brighter now, Dr. Lin checked her vitals. "You were out for 10 seconds. It felt like hours." Sarah replied, sweating. Renox stepped forward despite the guards. "You understand now," he said. "The archive is not a weapon. It is a warning." General Voss entered the vault with a heavy frown. He looked at the clone, then at Sarah. "You're getting too close to that thing." Sarah stood tall. "It's not a thing." Voss ignored her. "It's dangerous." Dr. Lin jumped in. "And so is what's coming." Voss slammed his fist on the control table. "You don't get it, do you?" He growled. "We already tried building our own version. We extracted tech from the Mars crash, ran DNA tests, spliced memory cells, and built a prototype." He pointed at a locked door at the end of the vault. "And it nearly killed the entire base." Sarah walked to the door slowly. "Let me see it," she said. Voss hesitated, then nodded. The door opened with a hiss inside. Floating in red fluid was a failed version of the archive. It was darker, violent in shape, and surrounded by cracks in the glass, as if it had tried to break out many times. It twitched when Sarah entered. Then it spoke. "I know you. I wanted you first." Sarah stumbled back. "What is this?" she asked, horrified. Dr. Lin looked down. "Your DNA was used in early experiments. We didn't know it had memory." Rinnick stepped inside, staring at the failed clone. "This is what happens," he said, "when you build something meant to preserve life, but fill it with fear. The archive must choose its host," he added, "not be forced." Suddenly, the clone child entered the room and touched the glass. The failed bulge screamed, not with sound, but with raw psychic pain. The glass cracked further. Sarah shouted, "Pull it back!" But Renix held her back. "No," he said. "Let it see what real memory looks like." The clone's hand glowed, and slowly, the failed archive stopped shaking. Its black form melted, softened, and drifted into stillness. "It's over," the child whispered. "I showed it love." The vault went quiet again. But no one could relax. General Voss pulled Sarah aside. "We need to contain this thing," he said firmly. Sarah shook her head. "No, we need to understand it." Voss narrowed his eyes. "You're compromised." She looked at him directly. "No, I'm evolving." An alert beeped across the vault. Incoming data from Earth. Unusual energy readings had just been detected in Sarah's hometown. The same readings from the first crash site 70 years ago. Renix looked up, his voice calm but serious. "They've activated another one." "Who?" Sarah asked. He looked her in the eyes. "Someone who wants to rewrite humanity's story." The clone child turned and whispered one final word, a word Sarah had never heard before, but somehow, deep inside, she understood it perfectly. It meant, "Mother of the last archive." And in that moment, she knew her role had changed. She was no longer just a witness, she was now part of the memory, and the archive was only beginning to open. The vault was quiet, too quiet. Not the kind of peace that brought comfort, but the kind that came just before something terrible began. Sarah stood near the observation window, staring at the stars above Chiron 5. One of those stars just blinked. Then another, and another, but they weren't stars, they were ships. And they were getting closer. Inside the control room, red lights blinked silently. "No alarms, no sirens, just quiet panic," Dr. Lin whispered. "They've entered our orbit without permission." General Voss looked at the radar, his face pale. "They're not answering any hails." Sarah turned away from the window. "What do they want?" Renix stepped forward, hands still cuffed but energy rising around him like heat from a fire. "They want the archive," he said, "or they want to destroy it." The clone child sat quietly in the center of the vault's chamber. Its eyes were closed, hands resting on its lap, but its mind was wide awake. Its heartbeat was not human. It pulsed like data flowing through a living wire. Suddenly, it opened its eyes. "They're afraid," the child said. "But they don't understand why." Dr. Lin approached with a scanner. "I've never seen anything like this," she whispered. "His brain is learning faster than our systems can process." Sarah looked down at the child. She repeated, "It's not a thing anymore." The child looked at Sarah and spoke. "I'm not alone." Sarah leaned forward. "What do you mean?" The child pointed to its chest. "There's another voice inside me. It came when I touched the memory tank. It's older, and it wants to protect you." The vault lights dimmed for a second, then flickered. Renix stepped forward, a strange glow forming around his wrists. His cuffs unlocked on their own and dropped to the floor. General Voss reached for his weapon, but Sarah stopped him. "He didn't do it to escape," she said. "He's reacting to something." Renix turned to face them all. "My species created the archive not as a weapon," he explained, "but as a last message, a final whisper of every race we failed to save. But once, a race tried to steal the archive, and it started the war." Sarah stepped closer. "Are those the ones coming now?" Renix nodded. "They fear humans will bond with the archive," he said. "Because if that happens, your kind will become something new. Not conquerors, not victims, but reminders. Outside the vault, the ground shook. An energy beam struck the defense tower above them, slicing it in half. The colony's shields activated, lighting the sky blue, but they were old, and cracks began to appear in the sky dome. General Vos shouted, "Evacuate non-combatants, all units to battle stations." Sarah looked at the clone child. It had stood up now, standing taller, face sharper, like it had aged several years in seconds. "Are you doing this?" she asked. The child shook its head. "I'm becoming what the archive wants me to be. Not a weapon, a decision." Inside the archive's tank, the ancient bulge pulsed again. Its voice echoed through every speaker, every metal wall. "Protocol initiated. Select host or collapse memory." Rinix looked at Sarah. "It's choosing." Dr. Lin stared at her screen, shocked. "It's reading all of us," she said, "but only reacting to you, Sarah." Sarah stepped forward, heart pounding. The clone child reached out its hand. "If you touch me, we merge. If we merge, I become permanent. If I become permanent, Earth will no longer be alone." The vault shook again. The lights flickered. General Vos shouted, "Don't do it, Greaves. We can't control what it becomes." Sarah looked at him, then at the child. "It's not about control," she whispered. "It's about choice." She touched the child's hand, and everything changed. The light exploded, but it wasn't fire. It was memory, history, languages, songs, birth, death. Stars forming and stars dying. Sarah saw it all in one breath. She stood on 100 worlds, lived 1,000 lives, and wept in silence as entire civilizations faded into dust. But then she heard her own voice. A child's laugh, her mother's goodbye, her brother's scream, and through all of it, one feeling held everything together, hope. When the light faded, Sarah stood taller. Her body was still human, but something inside had evolved. Her eyes glowed faintly blue. The clone child was gone. Or rather, it had become part of her. Rinix stepped back, watching in awe. "You are now the keeper of the final archive," he said. "You are no longer just human." The vault doors opened wide, showing the sky above. Enemy ships hovered like shadows. But as Sarah stepped outside, the archive within her pulsed once, and the ships paused, as if they recognized her, as if they remembered her. Sarah spoke, her voice not loud, but heavy with memory. "You've come for war," she said, "but I carry every war that came before. Turn back, or be forgotten like the rest." The sky held its breath, and for the first time since the archive arrived, even the stars seemed unsure what would happen next. Sarah Greaves stood still, her hands by her sides, her face calm. But inside her the archive whispered in hundreds of voices, some ancient, some innocent, some not human at all. They didn't scream or shout. They guided. Each voice was a memory, a warning, a piece of forgotten truth. And now, they all lived inside her. She had become more than human, but that also made her dangerous. Back at the human command base, General Vos stood in a dark room. The walls flickered with holograms of Earth's leaders, their faces full of fear, curiosity, and something else. Greed. "She's merged with it," Vos said. "It chose her." "What does that mean for us?" asked one of the figures. Vos replied coldly, "It means she can no longer be trusted." Meanwhile, deep inside the vault, Rinix stood beside the now empty archive tank, his posture stiff, his eyes distant. He could feel something wasn't right. The archive had made its choice, Sarah, but something about the silence after that choice felt wrong. The child was gone. The warships had paused, but not retreated, and Sarah, she hadn't spoken since the merge. Dr. Lin watched Sarah carefully, scanning her brain activity every minute. "It's stable," she whispered, "but not human." Sarah's eyes flickered toward her, calm but unreadable. "I hear your thoughts," Sarah said softly. Lin gasped. "You can read minds?" "Only when they echo," Sarah replied. "And right now, yours are screaming." Suddenly, the vault lights went red. An override command flashed on every screen. "Security lockdown, ordered by General Vos." Rinix stepped back. "He's making his move," Sarah looked up. He's afraid the archive belongs to me now. He wants it for Earth's control. Robotic guards stormed the chamber, surrounding Sarah and Rinix. Voss's voice echoed through the speakers. Sarah. Greaves, by order of the Global Defense Network. You are to be contained. You are no longer fully human. You are a global risk. Sarah didn't flinch. I'm what your world made me, she said. You dug up the archive, experimented on it, tortured its memory, and now that it's awake, you want to cage it again. The guards raised their weapons, but before they could fire, Rinix stepped between them and Sarah. If you try to harm the Keeper, he said, you will awaken the war memory. Dr. Lin shouted. Stop, don't touch her, we don't know what she become. But it was too late. One soldier fired a containment dart. It hit Sarah's shoulder. The moment the needle pierced her skin, everything changed. Sarah's eyes turned white. Not glowing, pure white. The room trembled as air pressure dropped. Memory flooded out of her in waves. Not just sound or light, but emotion. The guards dropped their weapons. Gasping, one fell to his knees crying, another began screaming. In a language no one understood, Dr. Lin stared at the monitor. She's projecting ancestral trauma. Sarah lifted her head, voice layered with 100 tones. You wanted the archive as a tool, she said. But memory is not a weapon. It is a mirror. Then, in the silence, a figure stepped out from the shadows. A man with no military badge, no rank, just presence. His voice was smooth, confident, and cold. You're wrong, Miss Greaves, he said. Memory is power. Sarah narrowed her eyes. And who are you? He smiled. I'm the reason your brother disappeared. The room froze. Even Rinix stepped back. Eyes wide, Sarah felt the archive recoil inside her. The voices inside her began whispering faster. He took memory from the archive. He burned truth to hide lies. The man stepped forward. I worked in the original Mars program, he said. We found the first archive pod, but it didn't choose me. So I made my own. Sarah's heart pounded. You built the failed version. She whispered. He smiled. And I'm going to finish what I started. Suddenly, the walls of the vault split open. Behind them was another chamber. One. Never shown on any map. Inside it was a dark version of the archive, twisting, alive, and pulsing with energy. The prototype. The man touched a panel, and it opened. Out stepped a second clone. But this one looked like Sarah, only colder, stronger, and emotionless. Rinix whispered, It's your copy. Sarah stared in horror. They made a version of me. Without memory. The clone stepped forward and spoke. Humanity must survive. Emotion is weakness. History is a burden. Sarah looked at it, then at the man. You created a machine that remembers nothing. He nodded. It obeys. The real Sarah stepped forward. You don't understand, she said. The archive doesn't just store memory. It grows from it. It becomes what we choose to forget. As the two Sarahs stood face to face, Rinix looked toward the sky. A new star had appeared. But this one wasn't a ship. It was a signal, and it was calling to something bigger. Sarah realized one truth in that moment. The real war was never about ships, guns, or armies. It was about who got to define memory and who was brave enough to carry it. Asterisk. The sky was broken. What once held stars and silence now held warships, fire, and the sound of history screaming. Chiron 5 was no longer a colony. It had become a battlefield between what humanity wanted to forget and what it had to remember. Inside this shattered vault, Sarah Greaves stood face to face with her own clone. It looked like her, moved like her, but it was hollow. No memories, no pain, no warmth in the eyes. It was what the archive might have been if it had chosen obedience over emotion. General Voss watched from the upper chamber, fists clenched. The dark-haired man beside him, the one who erased her brother, smiled. You see? He said, no hesitation, no confusion. She is Sarah without sorrow, without guilt, without weakness. But Sarah, the real one, stepped forward. She looked the clone in the eyes and spoke calmly. You know every move I'd make, but do you know why I make them? The clone tilted its head slightly. Silent, Sarah continued. I gave the archive my grief, my fear, my love. You gave it nothing. Suddenly the walls began to shake. A deep hum echoed through the floor. Not mechanical, emotional. The archive inside Sarah pulsed, not with light, but with memories from 1,000 lost worlds, all of them speaking one word, choose, from the skies above. One of the invading ships fired a massive energy beam. It headed straight for the colony's core. If it hit, Chiron 5 would be reduced to dust. Sarah closed her eyes, reached inside the archive, and whispered, Not yet. The energy blast stopped mid-air. Frozen like a paused memory, the air crackled around it, and then it shattered into harmless particles. Every soldier, every scientist, every alien ship paused. All eyes turned to Sarah. The clone stepped back, confused. I did not order that. You couldn't, Sarah said. You don't. Remember what it means to protect. You were built to obey. Dr. Lin ran into the chamber, holding a device. We decoded the last fragment, she shouted. The archive isn't just memory. It's a key to the lost tech of every species it's ever touched. Renick stepped forward, his voice filled with awe. You carry every solution forgotten. By time. Sarah's eyes glowed brighter. She reached her hand into the air, and a glowing circuit formed in her palm, one that had once belonged to a world long gone. A healing core, a weapon that built, not destroyed, from the sky. One of the enemy ships began to fall, but before it crashed, Sarah reached out and caught it with her mind. She set it gently on the ground, like putting a child to bed. Then she looked at the clone. Do you see? She said, Power without memory is nothing. The clone took one step forward, then another. Its skin flickered. Its face cracked. Inside it, a faint glow began to spark. And for the first time it whispered, I feel something. Sarah walked toward it. You were made from me, she said. But that means you can grow. You don't have to be a tool. The clone looked at her, confused. I don't know how. Sarah smiled gently. Then let's learn together. The clone closed its eyes and stepped into Sarah's arms. And as they touched, the archive flowed between them, not to destroy, not to erase, but to merge, to become whole, high above. The alien ships began to retreat. They sensed the change. The archive had chosen not destruction, but harmony, and that frightened them more than any weapon ever could. Inside the command center, the dark-haired man screamed, No, this isn't how it ends. You were supposed to serve. But the screen before him showed one final message. A voice of the archive itself, ancient and calm. You do not erase history. History erases you. A burst of light filled the chamber, and the man was gone. Not killed, but forgotten, erased from memory, like he had never been later. The colony began to rebuild. The skies were clear, the stars calm once more. Sarah walked among her people, not as a soldier, not as a hero, but as the living archive children. Ran past her, laughing. She smiled as one little girl looked up at her and asked, Do you remember my great-grandma? Sarah knelt down and replied, Yes, she said. She taught music on Earth. She played the violin even when her hands shook. The girl's eyes lit up. She lives inside me now, Sarah said, touching her heart. And now she lives inside you too. From a quiet hill nearby, Renick stood watching. He no longer wore armor. He no longer needed to. He had found what his people had searched for across galaxies. A species that didn't just survive, but remembered why it must survive. The war was over, but memory, true memory, had only just begun.